Inside the lavish Whitmore mansion, a little boy found comfort in the arms of the housemaid he called Mommy Rachel. The story unfolds beneath the glow of crystal chandeliers, where even luxury couldn't hide the power of genuine love. A love his biological mother, Victoria, never quite gave. Amidst silk gowns and expensive glasses of wine, a single heartfelt word shattered the polished surface Mommy Rachel. In that instant, a mother's unconditional love was put to the test, judged by cold stares and harsh prejudices. In Rachel's embrace, Ethan discovered a true home, one where love didn't need permission to exist. And when the mansion's doors finally closed, another opened Micah's house, where Rachel turned her loss into hope for children longing for love. This is a story of boundless motherhood, of compassion and healing, a reminder that true love is never forgotten.
If you find this video interesting and brings some lessons to you, please click the like and subscribe buttons to encourage us to bring you more meaningful stories. And now let's listen to the story together.
Morning light poured through the floor-to-ceiling glass windows of the Ashford mansion, like a stream of golden honey flowing across the long hallways and pristine white painted walls. Outside, the carefully manicured lawn embraced the mansion in the quiet of an exclusive suburban neighborhood where everything was planned down to the smallest detail. In that place, the sound of children's laughter seemed to have been replaced by the hum of vacuum cleaners and the echo of high heels in the hallways. Downstairs, a sparkling crystal chandelier glistened like a miniature sun, casting reflections onto walls adorned with oil paintings and expensive imported statues. In that light, everything exuded perfection, but also a coldness, like a museum, a place meant to be looked at rather than lived in. In the nursery, where the morning sun streamed onto walls, painted in pastel blue and ivory, a middle-aged woman was carefully changing the clothes of a giggling 4-year-old boy. Her name was Rachel. Rachel Carter, slender, her brown hair tied neatly in a bun, her face marked by faint lines of time and sleepless nights. Her eyes shone with tenderness, mixed with a sorrow only those who have known loss could truly understand. "Stay still, baby," she said in a voice as soft as a breeze adjusting the collar of his shirt. "Don't wiggle too much. I don't want to poke you. Mommy, Rachel." The boy laughed gleefully, his bright blue eyes filled with absolute trust and love. "You always know how to make me giggle." Rachel paused for a brief moment, her hands trembling slightly. She smiled gently, holding back a sudden tear. "Yes, sweetheart. Mommy, Rachel always knows how to make you smile." The boy's name was Ethan Whitmore, the only son of Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore, the owners of the Ashford mansion. Ethan was born into a world of power and prestige, where everything was scheduled, from social gatherings to every breakfast and afternoon snack. Yet Ethan often found the greatest peace in Rachel's arms, more than in anyone else's embrace in the house. Ethan's biological mother, Victoria Whitmore, was the epitome of perfection: lustrous blonde hair, a tall figure, icy blue eyes, and a wardrobe curated by top designers. Victoria was the kind of woman who could make anyone feel small with just a glance. Every step she took on the marble floor rang out like an invisible hammer, beating in the heart of anyone who faced her. That morning, Victoria descended the grand staircase in glossy nude high heels, each step echoing like a declaration of power. She stopped at the end of the hallway, watching Rachel and Ethan through the open doorway. A flicker of annoyance crossed her eyes, a look of a mistress supervising her servant. "Rachel," she said in a voice that was gentle, but carried enough weight to make the listener shrink. "Please make sure Ethan doesn't ruin his clothes today. The guests are coming at noon. I want everything to be perfect." Rachel nodded, her gaze calm. "Yes, ma'am. I'll take care of it." Victoria inhaled deeply, glancing briefly at the boy before turning away. In her eyes, Rachel was merely the help, quiet, attentive, but replaceable. And Ethan was the precious heir, the perfect replica of the Whitmore lineage that she was determined to protect like a delicate crystal vase that could not afford a single scratch. But to Ethan, Rachel was everything he longed for. In a mother, the one who knew how to cut the crusts off his bread just the way he liked, who knew the song that could lull him to sleep, who knew how to hold him tightly when nightmares crept in at night. There were nights when Rachel sat in the small room next to the laundry, the space where she was allowed to sleep. On the old wooden table, she kept a worn photo frame, its corners frayed. The picture showed a boy with bright eyes and an innocent smile. Rachel's gaze lingered on the photo, as if her heart was still stuck somewhere far away, in a place where memories refused to rest. "Good night, Micah," she whispered every night, gently placing a finger on the photograph. Then she would look towards Ethan's bedroom where his steady breathing rose and fell, a reminder that she was caring for a child who wasn't her own, yet her love for him was as real as any mother's love could be. That morning, Ethan dashed into the kitchen, clutching a chocolate cookie he had sneaked from breakfast. "Mommy Rachel," he squealed, throwing his arms around her legs. Chocolate smeared all over Rachel's apron, but she just laughed and gently rubbed his back, as if every mistake could be erased by a loving embrace. A 4-year-old boy, a woman with a mother's heart, and a wealthy mansion empty of love. Everything was being arranged for a grand party, where the light of glory and the shadow of loneliness would collide, setting the stage for a story no one could predict. Rachel hugged Ethan's small shoulders and looked up at the sunlight sparkling through the window. In that moment, she knew the love she held for this boy was the only light that could warm this house. And perhaps, just perhaps, it would be the spark of a storm no one saw coming. The atmosphere in the Ashford mansion was stretched tight like a violin string, wound too taut, ready to snap at any moment. The doorbell rang, signaling the start of the lavish party that Victoria Whitmore had spent weeks planning. Black limousines lined the driveway, uniformed drivers, standing tall, white gloves on their hands. Inside, the sound of high heels glided across marble floors, the fizz of champagne, and the hum of polite laughter, all blending into a smooth, artificial melody that was almost unbearable. Rachel stood in the spacious kitchen, her hands busy, arranging trays of cookies and triangular sandwiches, Ethan's favorite. On the gleaming countertop, the light reflected her eyes, tired but determined. She had been doing this job for nearly 5 years, memorizing every habit of the boy, and every rhythm of Victoria's coldness. The sound of Ethan's slippers echoed in the hallway. He burst into the kitchen like a summer breeze, clutching a crayon and munching on half a chocolate cookie. Crumbs and crayon marks dotted his shirt. Rachel chuckled, kneeling to wipe the stains from his clothes with the practiced hand of a mother who had comforted many small messes. "Hey, slow down there, buddy," she laughed. "We can't have your shirt looking like a coloring book before the guests even arrive." Ethan scrunched his face. "It itches, Mommy Rachel. This bow tie is too tight." He tugged at his collar, his eyes reflecting the innocent discomfort of a child. Rachel sighed, gently adjusting the tie. "I know, sweetheart. Just a little while." "Okay. Then we can take it off, promise." Just then, Victoria entered the kitchen. The scent of expensive perfume mingled with the sweet smell of cookies, but it couldn't erase the cold air she brought with her. Her eyes swept over the trays of treats before landing on Rachel. "Rachel, please remember to wear the Navy uniform. The simple one. Nothing too bright. We can't have you standing out among the guests." Her voice was light, but as sharp as a blade. Rachel lowered her head. "Yes, ma'am." Victoria paid no attention to Ethan's worried eyes. She glanced at her son, like she was inspecting a decorative object before walking away. Her figure disappeared down the grand hallway, leaving behind a trail of perfume and an aftertaste of distance. Rachel swallowed hard, trying to steady herself. She knew her place in this house, just the help the nanny. Nothing more, nothing less. But every night when Ethan whispered, "I love you, Mommy Rachel," she felt like his whole world. And she had accepted that quiet world as her own destiny. The party began. Flowing evening gowns, crisp tuxedos, diamonds sparkling under the crystal chandelier. The guests, doctors, lawyers, CEOs, strolled through the jazz-filled air, lifting glasses, exchanging empty words about investments, stocks, and prestigious private schools. Ethan stood at his mother's side, clutching a plastic cup of apple juice. His eyes darted around, searching for Rachel, the only one who made him feel safe among the strangers. Rachel dressed in her Navy uniform, with its stiff collar blended into the bar area. Her hands moved quickly, arranging glasses, her face calm, but her heart felt squeezed tight. Every glance that brushed over her felt cold, as if she were just another fixture of the house, rather than a person. Among the dazzling crowd, Victoria moved with the grace of a stage performer, her smile charming, but her eyes sharp as a blade. She shook hands with guests, her laughter light and polished, when someone complimented her son for being so well behaved. Victoria beamed with pride. "We've worked hard to raise him right." No one cast a single glance at Rachel, the one who had stayed up countless nights to soothe Ethan's nightmares, who had scrubbed the paint from his shirts, who had taught him to say please and thank you. From across the room, Rachel watched it all, her eyes heavy with memories. She remembered the nights Ethan burned with fever, the times he had vomited on her shirt, the mornings he had buried his face in her chest and cried "Mommy," Rachel in panic. In this place of luxury, those memories never even had a name. The jazz music suddenly fell silent, making way for Victoria's speech. She raised her glass of rosé, her voice ringing out in the hush. To friends, old and new, to family, to the beauty of shared moments. Suddenly, a child's voice pierced the fake melody, tearing through the air. "Mommy, I want to sit with Mommy." Ethan, standing near the dessert table, pointed straight at Rachel. Every eye turned to him, then swung to Rachel. Victoria froze. Her smile twisted into a thin, trembling line, her face going pale. The guests whispered, some jaws dropped, a few phones came up to record the moment. An awkwardness spread across the room, like a cold wind sweeping through imported roses. Rachel stood motionless, the tray of glasses trembling in her hands. She looked at Ethan, his eyes bright with hope, waiting for her to open her arms. She wanted to run to him to scream, "Mommy is here," but everything around her felt frozen. Victoria laughed a high, sharp laugh, like breaking glass. "Oh, he's just confused. You know how kids are. Rachel is just our nanny." Her laugh tinkled like shattered crystal on the marble floor. But Ethan wasn't confused. He raced past the evening gowns and tuxedos straight to Rachel and grabbed her hand, tears streaming down his flushed cheeks. "Mommy, Rachel," he whispered, "you love me more than she does." In a sea of silence, Rachel knelt down gently, stroking his cheek. "I love you so much, sweetheart." Her voice trembled. Ethan pressed his face into her chest, his tiny arms wrapped around her, as if the whole world had disappeared, except for the two of them. The guests held their breath. They had never seen anything crack the perfect facade of the Whitmore household like this. Victoria stood frozen, her eyes flashing with anger, her face bright red. No more fake smile, no more powerful pose, just a mother exposed not by her child, but by the one she had always looked down on. That fake melody shattered. The luxurious jazz notes faded, making way for a more honest song, a symphony woven from love, sacrifice, and pain. And it was only just beginning. The guests' eyes lingered on Rachel and Ethan, as if the entire party had been paused, just to witness that small, honest plea. "Mommy Rachel." In that moment, time seemed to freeze, and every wine glass in the guests' hands went silent. A soft cough, someone trying to break the tension. But Ethan, his eyes shining, cared nothing for designer dresses or the judging stares. He looked at Rachel, his gaze filled with the last hope he had. Victoria quickly regained her composure, but her eyes burned with anger and embarrassment. "Ethan," she said stiffly, "Rachel is not your mother." Her voice cut the air like a knife slicing through the hushed living room. Whispers rose around them. Rachel could hear her own breath quicken. Rachel gently squeezed Ethan's hand, her fingers trembling. "It's okay, honey," she whispered. "Just breathe. I'm here." Her heart clenched as she felt his small hand cling to hers, as if holding on to the only safe place in a sea of strangers. Suddenly, Ethan burst into tears. "But she's my mommy. She's the one who takes care of me when I'm sick. She makes me sandwiches without the crust. She sings to me when I'm scared." His voice echoed across the room, lonely as an accusation. A middle-aged man, a guest turned to his companion. "Is that the nanny he's talking about?" His eyes held a mix of curiosity and discomfort. A woman in a red dress, her hair elegantly pinned up, tilted her head and whispered, "She's just the help. Kids get attached to anyone who spends time with them." Rachel heard their words and felt her heart tighten. She wanted to stand to scoop Ethan up and run away. But she knew she couldn't, not in this house where every eye was fixed on her, as if she were the villain who had shattered Victoria's perfect picture. Victoria's grip on her wineglass turned her knuckles white. "Rachel," she said, her voice colder and sharper than ever, "please return to the kitchen immediately. This is highly inappropriate." The words struck like a judge's gavel, condemning Rachel to the lowest rung in this house. She could feel every eye watching, judging like arrows piercing her skin. Rachel remained on her knees, holding Ethan's hand. She looked into his tear-stained eyes. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm not going anywhere yet. I'm right here." But deep down she knew everything was changing, and she could no longer be Mommy Rachel. She was just the help another part of the house easily replaced, like a curtain or a sofa. Another guest turned to Victoria, his voice awkward. "Victoria?" He seems very attached to her. Maybe Victoria cut him off her voice like steel know. Rachel knows her place here. And so should everyone else. Her tone silenced every whisper. Ethan sniffled, his face flushed and tear-streaked. Rachel tried to smile at him, but it was as fragile as a flame in the wind. "I love you so much, Ethan," she whispered. "Always." Victoria crossed her arms. Her lips pressed into a cold, thin line. "Take him upstairs, Rachel," she ordered, "and clean him up." Then she turned away, leaving behind a sobbing child and a woman with a broken heart. Rachel rose, still holding Ethan's hand. The boy clung to her skirt, as if afraid she might disappear. Every eye followed them as they left the room. Jazz music rose again, trying to cover the silence that had just fallen. But in Rachel's heart, the music had lost all meaning. It was just noise, now empty noise, hiding wounds that would never heal. The hallway to the upstairs was eerily silent. Rachel heard her own footsteps, Ethan's quiet sobs. She knew she was walking the final steps of a life lived quietly in this house, a role that had lasted too long, too painfully, and too unfairly. Ethan's room opened with the warm glow of a night lamp. Rachel sat down on the bed, wiping tears from his cheeks. "It's okay, baby," she soothed. "Sometimes grown-ups forget what's important. But you and I, we know the truth, right?" The boy nodded weakly, his hand still wrapped around hers. Outside, Victoria's laughter and that of her guests rose sharp and bright, like the sounds of a world Rachel had never truly belonged to. But to her, there was only one world that mattered, the one where she and Ethan could love each other without needing permission from anyone. And in that moment, she understood that everything would change, and she knew she would do whatever it took to protect the love of this child until her very last breath. The evening wore on like a persistent drizzle. In the small private room next to the laundry, Rachel sat quietly on the edge of the bed, clutching the faded photograph of Micah. Painful memories flooded back hospitals. The sound of the ventilator. The doctor's voice saying, "We did everything we could." But tonight, that pain was overshadowed by Ethan's tearful eyes, and the question he had asked Mommy, "Rachel, you love me," more than she does right. The faint strains of jazz music from the living room drifted up, then fell silent. A suffocating stillness blanketed the Ashford mansion. Rachel placed Micah's photo back into the drawer, closed it softly, and stood. The yellow light stretched across the hallway, like stage lights illuminating a role she had played for so many years, the perfect nanny. But tonight, that role was coming to an end. Downstairs, Victoria stood by the buffet table, her face tense. Her gaze sliced across the uneasy guests like a cold, sharp blade, though she tried to mask it. Whispers and sideways glances spread like wildfire. Victoria, one guest, Mrs. Miller, director of a local charity, spoke up. The way Ethan called her Mommy, maybe she's more than just a nanny to him. Children know love when they feel it. Victoria forced a smile, her face twitching. "Rachel is an employee," she replied, her voice shaky. "She's good at what she does, but Ethan is confused. He's just a child." Confused. Mrs. Miller tilted her head, eyes keen. "Or honest. Children rarely lie about love." The words sliced through Victoria's confidence. She turned away her wine glass, trembling in her hand. Her eyes met Rachel's, who stood at the doorway, the light behind her casting a long shadow on the polished tile floor. Ethan appeared behind Rachel, tears still glistening in his eyes. He ran straight into the middle of the party, his shirt wrinkled and smeared with cookie crumbs. In his hand was a messy drawing, a woman in a long-sleeved dress, with her hair in a bun holding the hand of a little boy. Across the top in shaky, childlike letters, "Mommy, Rachel." Ethan held the drawing high in the middle of the room, his voice trembling. "She's my mommy. She takes care of me. She loves me." The room seemed to hold its breath. Rachel knelt down, her hands shaking as she took the drawing. Tears blurred her vision as she looked at the boy with a gaze full of all the love she'd never been allowed to speak. "Sweetheart," she whispered, her voice breaking, "I love you more than you'll ever know." Victoria stepped forward, her face pale, voice trembling with rage and shame. "Rachel, enough. You've crossed the line." She snatched the drawing from Rachel's hands, crumpling it in her fist, as if trying to erase the evidence of love. "You are a nanny, nothing more." She spat, her face red with fury. Ethan burst into tears. "No. Mommy Rachel is my real mommy. She loves me when you're not even here." His cries rang out like an alarm bell, shaking the entire room. All eyes turned to Victoria. A guest murmured, "That's not something you can fake." Another hissed, "Poor boy. He knows who really loves him." Victoria broke out in a cold sweat, her silk dress clinging to her like a shroud. She looked around, and then turned to Rachel. "You are fired. Leave this house at once." Rachel stood, her eyes shining with a pride she had never felt before. "I know my place," she said, her voice steady, but breaking. But love doesn't know boundaries. Ethan deserves better than a mother who only cares about appearances. Victoria staggered back, as if she'd been slapped. Her eyes widened, filled with rage and humiliation. Ethan sobbed uncontrollably, running into Rachel's arms. "Please, don't go, Mommy. Rachel," he cried, clutching at her skirt. Rachel bent down and stroked his hair. "I'll always be in your heart. Baby," she whispered, tears falling on his head. "I'll always love you." It felt like a farewell, etched into both their hearts. Charles Whitmore, long distant and cold, stood at the back of the room, watching everything unfold. For the first time, his eyes showed a hint of realization, as if he saw something he'd missed for years. Victoria gasped, her eyes hollow. "Rachel, please leave. Now." Her voice cracked, but she tried to hold on to the last threads of her fragile authority. Rachel looked at Ethan, her eyes glowing like the last candle burning in the darkness. "Be brave, Ethan," she whispered lovingly. "Be kind. And remember, love is the only thing that matters." Then she slowly rose, placing Ethan's hand into Victoria's, for the first time in years, letting him go. Ethan clung to her skirt, crying out, "No, don't go, Mommy. Rachel, please don't go." But Rachel had to leave. The boys' cries echoed through the living room, tearing through the carefully constructed facade that Victoria had built. Every gaze followed Rachel now, but not with cold judgment this time, with awe-guilt, and perhaps a touch of shame. Rachel walked out of the living room, her silhouette disappearing through the mansion's grand door. The door closed behind her with a cold, final click. A breeze drifted by, soft, but biting. Inside Rachel's heart, she felt it clearly. That closed door did not just end one chapter of her life. It opened another where love and memories would live again. That night in the luxurious Whitmore mansion, the jazz music played on, but no one really heard it anymore. In their hearts, only the echoes of a child's cries, the words "Mommy," "Rachel," and the image of a woman who had loved a boy more than her own life remained. In that lavish ballroom, the jazz music had long since stopped. The glittering crystal glasses now stood as silent witnesses to a battle that had left no one unscarred. A little boy stood there, Ethan, his clear eyes clutching his crumpled drawing. A woman knelt before him, her eyes glowing with the rare light of unconditional love in that stifling air. Rachel Victoria spat, her voice sharp as a whip. "You are making a scene. Take Ethan and leave the room immediately." Her lips trembled, her face flushed with anger and humiliation. But Rachel did not move. She looked straight at Victoria, no longer bowing her head. Her gaze was calm, but unwavering. "I'm not making a scene," Rachel said, her voice low, but strong, carrying through the vast room. "I'm simply telling the truth." Every eye turned to them. A hush fell each whisper, like a wave lapping against the walls of pretense. Mrs. Miller shook her head. "Sometimes it's the help who shows us what real love looks like." Victoria's hands clenched white. "You are just the help," she hissed each word, like poison. Don't you dare think you have a say in how I raise my child. Rachel lifted her head, her eyes bright with pain, but steady. Then, where were you? She asked, her voice cracking when he had nightmares at 2 a.m. When he scraped his knee and ran to me instead of you. Where were you when he cried for a bedtime story and you were too busy with your parties? The entire room fell silent. Even the sound of breathing seemed louder than the hush. Ethan looked at Victoria, his small hands trembling around his crumpled drawing. Mommy, Rachel is my... Mommy, he whispered, his voice small, but heartbreakingly true. Victoria seemed struck by lightning. Her face relaxed for an instant, before contorting in rage. That's enough, she screamed, her voice echoing through the room. Rachel, pack your things and get out of my house tonight. Ethan sobbed uncontrollably, clutching Rachel's legs. Please don't go. Mommy, Rachel, please. His cries shattered the formalities, the rituals. They echoed through the room, making even the most expensive dresses seem ruffled, the tuxedos worthless. A few guests quietly wiped their eyes. A middle-aged man turned to his wife and sighed. It's tragic. The boy knows who really loves him. Rachel bent down and hugged Ethan, tears streaming down her cheeks. I love you, Ethan, she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. More than anything in this world. But sometimes love means letting go. She kissed his forehead, her eyes memorizing every feature, every breath. Be strong, be kind, and always remember that you are loved. Victoria stood, her face red with shame and rage. She reached to pull Ethan toward her, but he struggled, tears streaming down his cheeks. No, I want Mommy. Rachel, I want her. His words exploded like thunder, shattering the proud shell Victoria had built around herself. Her lips trembled. Rachel, she hissed, leave. Or I'll call security. Rachel looked around, the eyes still on her, but this time they were not just judging. In those eyes, she saw respect, compassion, and even shame. Rachel drew a deep breath. Okay, she said, her voice calm. I'll leave. But know this, Victoria Ethan deserves a mother who's there, not just in photos. The room fell silent. Victoria stood frozen, her mouth opening, but no words coming out. Rachel leaned down, wiping Ethan's tears. I love you, sweetheart. You are always in my heart. Ethan clung to her hand. Don't go. Please, don't go. He sobbed, his voice breaking like a tiny heart being crushed. Rachel bent down, hugging him one last time, as if to imprint her warmth on his soul. Then she let go, her eyes steady, her back straight. Goodbye, Ethan. And she walked away each step, like walking on thorns. But she never looked back. Behind her, the ballroom burst into tears and quiet sobs. Some guests lowered their heads. Victoria stood, her arms gripping Ethan, her eyes blank, as if the perfect life she had built had finally collapsed. Rachel passed through the grand doors of Ashford Mansion. The door closed behind her, with a cold final click. Outside, a soft breeze carried the scent of late-blooming jasmine. Rachel lifted her face, letting the wind carry away her final tears. Inside her, an old chapter had closed. But somewhere, deep within her heart, another door had opened, a door to hope, to love, to a home that was truly hers. A week had passed since that night, when the grand party shattered under the weight of a simple truth. Love isn't measured by silk dresses or crystal glasses, but by gentle hugs on feverish nights, by soft whispers during nightmares. Inside the Ashford Mansion, everything had returned to its cold order. Victoria still walked the halls, with her proud gait, her head held high, as if nothing had ever happened. But behind that exterior, calls from guests who had attended the party kept asking the same question. Victoria, is it true? Did Ethan really call the maid Mommy in front of everyone? Their eyes betrayed their unease. Charles, the husband, who had always been absent, slipped quietly through the living room, avoiding his wife's gaze, as if ashamed of himself. He had failed to protect Ethan from a cold world that he himself was a part of. Ethan, the 4-year-old boy with innocent eyes, often sat for hours in his bedroom clutching the drawing that said, Mommy Rachel, like a precious treasure. Even though Victoria tried to hide it, he found it again and kept it under his pillow like a talisman. Every night he whispered softly, Mommy, Rachel, are you still here? Elsewhere in the city, Rachel stood in front of a small building tucked away on a street corner. On its freshly painted wooden door hung a simple wooden sign, carved with the words Micah's house. Inside, there were no crystal chandeliers or imported furniture. Just walls decorated with children's drawings, bookshelves filled with fairy tales, plush animal pillows, and boxes of crayons. The scent of freshly baked cookies mingled with peppermint tea, creating a warm, familiar atmosphere, something that had never existed in the Ashford Mansion. Rachel smiled as she watched the children playing, each one carrying invisible wounds of loneliness, loss, hurt that the outside world rarely noticed. She knelt down to tie a shoelace for a little girl, then gently wiped away the tears of a boy who had just fallen. In that moment, she was no longer the help or the rejected Mommy Rachel, but a guiding light for these small hearts searching for warmth. One morning, as Rachel was rearranging books on a shelf, the door opened. A young woman with brown skin, her hair neatly tied back in a professional suit, walked in. Her eyes shone with emotion as she looked at Rachel. Rachel, she gasped, her voice trembling. It's really you, Rachel. Froze, tears welling in her eyes. Lena, the two women embraced, time standing still. Lena Hayes, now a well-known pediatrician, had once been the little girl at the orphanage, where Rachel had volunteered after losing Micah. Do you know, Lena whispered, you're the reason I made it. The reason I believed I was worth something. Rachel smiled through her tears. And look at you now, she said, changing the world. Lena squeezed Rachel's hands. You changed mine first. In that moment, memories both happy and sad flooded back Micah Ethan. The long nights by hospital beds, the days of being a mother in the shadows. All of it had brought her here to a house, named after her son, a safe place, for little hearts, needing love more than anything else. In a corner of the room, a painting hung on the wall, a child's clumsy drawing of a smiling boy, next to a woman in a navy dress. Below it, in colorful crayon letters, it read Mommy, Rachel. Rachel walked over and placed her hand on the painting. A single tear rolled down her cheek, but this time it was a tear of joy. Outside the window, the afternoon sun bathed the room in golden light. Rachel turned to the children, giggling and playing, her hand resting on her chest, where her heart beat with the same steady, loving rhythm. "Micah," she whispered, "I couldn't save you, but I promise I'll keep saving every child I can, far away." In the Ashford mansion, Ethan still clutched the drawing he had made that day. He believed that somewhere out there, Mommy Rachel still loved him, still kept her promise that love would overcome any distance. And in a big city, there was a small house where the light never went out, Micah's house. There love took root, grew, and shone like a lighthouse, guiding little souls to a real home. In the sunset glow, Rachel smiled. Her life wasn't made of silk dresses or sparkling glasses. Her life was made of small hands clutching her in the dark of laughter, ringing out between walls filled with hope, of clumsy drawings, calling her by the name the world had denied Mommy Rachel. And she knew she had truly found her home.